Margarita's told me that one of her favourite dishes when she was a child was a steak and kidney pudding. Well, I think Margarita and actually most of the rest of the country, I suspect. So she's given me her mum's recipe for steak and kidney pudding, and I'm going to try it out. And in some ways, it's very similar to, in fact, in most ways, it's very similar to a standard steak and kidney pudding, but there are a few really interesting points in it. Now, first of all, you need to make your basic suet dough. Very, very simple to make. You just mix self-raising flour with half its weight in suet, a little bit of salt, and enough water to make a nice, soft, slightly springy dough. It's a lovely pastry or dough to work with. Very, very nice. Let's just put a little bit of flour on there to stop it sticking. So here's our pastry. And you roll it out into a nice circle, just turning it so that it doesn't stick. Now, I think that's probably around big enough. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. Then, before I do anything else, I'm going to cut out roughly a quarter of the pastry. And this is what I'll use to make the lid when I've filled the pudding. Right, so we don't need that for the time being. And here's my pudding basin. I've greased it using butter. You could use oil. I prefer just adding a little bit of butter there for the flavour. But that's entirely up to you. And the pastry just drops down into the basin. Press it slightly up the sides. It does have a tendency to shrink and slip back down, but that's fine. But you really do have to make sure you've pinched those two edges together really, really well so that the filling doesn't ooze out as it's cooking to discolour the outside. There we go. So that's our pudding basin, nicely lined. And now for the actual filling. Here are the ingredients, pretty straightforward. I've got some ox kidney. You could use lamb's kidney as well. Ox kidney is a bit cheaper. Let's pop that down there. And then there is, of course, the beef, the steak itself. I'm using chuck steak, but any good quality braising steak will do absolutely fine. And then I've got some parsley, some chopped onion, and what I also need is a bit of seasoned flour. Just about, yes, a little spoonful of flour like that. And I'm going to season it with a pinch of dried mustard. Now, I quite like the flavour of mustard, so although Marguerite said just a pinch, I'm putting 2 in. Wild woman, eh? And then plenty of black pepper, because this is the main seasoning for the dish, so you can be quite vigorous with your additions of pepper and mustard. And incidentally, in case you're thinking this is going to be ferociously hot and burning on the tongue, it really isn't that bad, because when you heat mustard and you cook mustard, the heat itself goes out and it disappears, and you're left with the flavour instead. And some salt. Let's just mix those bits together. Lovely. So that's our seasoned flour. The first thing I'm going to do now is to cut up this kidney into fine cubes, quite small cubes. This is ox kidney, and one thing you really have to be careful about is to get rid of this tough white core in the middle. Make sure none of that's used. If it's still got skin on the outside, take that off as well. It just pulls off very easily. This has already been skinned. I'll cut it into slices, trying to avoid too much of that white. Right, that'll do for the moment. The next thing is, and this is where I thought the recipe got particularly interesting, is to roll little bits of kidney inside the strips of steak. So here we are, little cube here. And then I'm just literally going to roll it up inside that to make a nice little round like that. Sweet. Very cute. And here's another. And you just keep on doing this until you've got most of the meat wrapped around most of the kidney. Once you've rolled a few of these little packages, just pop them into the flour, turn them over. You may find the kidney wants to escape, but don't worry, push it back in. And roll them in flour, and then pop them in a snug little layer like this. There we go. We add some finely chopped onion, a little bit more, then a bit of chopped parsley as well. And you carry on building up these layers with the rolls, then the onion, then the parsley, until you've almost filled the pudding basin. And now that the pudding is filled right up, I'm going to add just a little touch of water to help get the gravy going. Let's put a few spoonfuls of water just over that. And the meat, I think, will probably exude quite a lot of juice itself as well. So there'll be lots of delicious gravy. Fantastic. All it needs now is its lid and to be steamed. And I'm going to turn up the heat under my pan of water here. That's ready for the steaming. Do you remember this little bit of dough that's been sitting quietly waiting for me to come back? That was the quarter I cut out of the first circle of dough. This is what makes the lid. So we need to roll this out to just about the size of the top of the pudding basin. And I think this is probably about the right size, possibly even slightly too large, but that's all right because you can just pinch it into place. And just as we did with the original lining of the basin, you want to really pinch the edges together so that the meat and the onion and all those seasonings and the water are firmly enclosed inside the pastry case. So just do it like that. Now, I'm sure that Marguerite would do it much more neatly than this because it is rather terrifying cooking for her because she just knows everything there is to know about cooking. And she always does things so beautifully. And I'm more of a slightly throw it together kind of a cook, I think, so I hope she'll be kind to me. But after all, you're doing home cooking. You don't want it to look like it came out of a tin, do you? No. There we go. So those are all pinched together. And, of course, we need to cover it to prevent water getting into it as it's being steamed. So for this, you need silver foil and greaseproof paper. That really is ready to go into the pan and to steam away gently. So I'm going to lower it into the pan, turn the heat up under it so it comes to a good rolling boil, and then cover it snugly like that. Now you leave it, and this is Marguerite's tip for a really light suet crust, so you leave it at a fairly good boil for at least an hour. And then you can turn the heat down a little lower, check the water level, add a little bit more boiling water, has to be boiling if it needs it, if the level's dropping a bit too low, and you leave it at a slightly lower temperature for at least another 3 hours. Yep, that's 4 hours altogether. But of course you can go off and do something else in the house while it's happening. And then within 4 hours' time we will have the most gorgeous and I hope light pudding, which Marguerite will be coming to judge.